Statin drugs are one of the most widely prescribed pharmaceutical agents. What statin drugs do is they block the body's ability to produce cholesterol at a cellular level. Now, let's go through this. These drugs are blocking the body's ability to produce cholesterol, so therefore they be used if there's a problem in this, right? Therefore, they're being used and being prescribed if the body is overproducing cholesterol at a cellular level. Well, if the body's actively overproducing cholesterol at a cellular level, wouldn't common sense indicate that maybe it's doing that for a reason? And if the body is overproducing cholesterol at a cellular level for a reason, wouldn't it make more sense to find out why the body's overproducing cholesterol and fix that than just to take a drug that blocks the body's ability to handle the situation? Let me give you some insight into what's actually happening in many, if not most, situations. These are just some examples. All right, what I'm going to show you right now is an example of a cholesterol molecule. Okay, there it is. Somewhat complicated molecule, not that complicated. Okay, the red here would represent what's called an oxygen atom, right? That would represent a hydrogen atom. These guys here would represent carbon atoms. This, you could see it would represent what's called a single bond between two carbon atoms. And this here, you can see it would represent what's called a double bond between two carbon atoms. So there's, oops, cholesterol fell apart. That would represent a cholesterol molecule. Okay. Let's look at some other molecules. This would represent vitamin D. And maybe you're already saying that looks somewhat similar. It's actually completely identical to the cholesterol molecule other than one thing. Let me show you. All right, you'll see on the side of the molecule that has the oxygen, that's called a hydroxyl group, by the way, an oxygen with a hydrogen. Okay, you'll see there's this first ring right here, closed ring, and then you'll see there's this other situation right there. Now, if I do this, I would be closing that ring, okay? Well, that's the only difference. Again, here's the cholesterol molecule representation. There's that first ring, identical, and here's that second, now closed ring. Everything else in the molecule is identical. So isn't that interesting that cholesterol and vitamin D are almost identical? So it would make sense if on a cellular level the body had low levels of vitamin D, which is very common. I have or had very low levels of vitamin D. Most people do. And please don't believe, I live in Florida, please don't believe that just by going out in the sun 30 minutes a day you're going to get sufficient vitamin D. Most people have very low levels of vitamin D. Now, why is that? That's a whole other separate discussion, but it is the case. Most people have very low levels of vitamin D. So when it makes sense, if the body has very low levels of vitamin D, the body would say, hey, I need to produce this stuff. Hey, I know how I can do it. I can do it via cholesterol because cholesterol leads to vitamin D. So the body, in a vain attempt to normalize the vitamin D situation, may indeed overproduce cholesterol. Commonly occurs. Another situation. This is an example of a hormone called testosterone. Same color coding. Now again, you might look at it and think, well, that's very different, potentially. Actually, it's identical. The molecule is identical to cholesterol up to this point. Up to this point. Same exact molecule. So again, if on a cellular level the body has a low level of testosterone, quite common in men under stress and having other nutritional or inflammatory situations, but the body on a cellular level needs testosterone, and what might it do? Overproduce cholesterol. By the way, women commonly after menopause start getting cholesterol problems. What happens to women after menopause? Well, estradiol levels drop. Oop, cholesterol makes estradiol. Progesterone levels drop. Oop, cholesterol makes progesterone. By the way, in men and women, and even in younger people, probably the main hormonal driving force that leads to overproduction of cholesterol is cortisol, the stress hormone. You know, we live in this modern world of many kinds of stress, psychological, emotional stress, and physical stress from a variety of situations, nutritional deficiencies, problems in our gut because of the antibiotics we've taken, and maybe we weren't nursed as children, situations with toxins in our environment, etc. So those are just a few certain examples of how, or specific examples of how common situations, a low nutrient such as vitamin D, other nutrients do it, CoQ10, vitamin E, or certain hormonal situations. We saw how testosterone, estradiol, progesterone, sex hormones, cortisol, stress hormone, can lead to a situation with cholesterol. Other hormone systems, thyroid, insulin, etc., are strongly connected. So again, what the doctor really should be doing, rather than just blocking the manifestation of the true problem with a powerful drug, and actually probably worsening the underlying problem, although covering up one of the manifestations of the cholesterol, the doctor should be looking at the root cause. And in this situation, like most, it ends up being either a nutritional imbalance. We saw vitamin D. I mentioned vitamin E and CoQ10. Or hormonal imbalance. We saw the sex hormones and cortisol. I also mentioned thyroid and insulin. And inflammation, which I alluded to when I talked about problems in the intestinal system and toxins, etc. Thank you.